Okay, so I'd like to give a talk on basically the non-dual Buddha. And uh, not an easy subject in a way, but I want to start by kind of defining non-duality or describing it or giving a taste of it. It really comes from the big picture. For example, Zen koans that cut through the duality. Very simple Zen koan. What's the sound of one hand clapping? It's so clear. Two hands, duality, two are needed to make a sound. So what's the sound of one hand clapping? What's the face that we were before we were born or before our parents were born? In other words, we are part of the universe. We are not separate from the universe. We are absolutely part of everything. We are made of the elements. We are made of the universe. We are the universe constructed in the form that then thinks of itself as separate and needing to survive as a body. Our awareness can join us to all awareness into it. The awareness is the place that we can find ourselves joined again. It's not so much, I'm using the word awareness. This is a complicated language. In every language, doesn't matter which, in the Pali language, all these words for mind and so on are all mixed up, in English as well. And, I won't even try and tell you all the mess to do with language of mind, awareness, consciousness in other language, in Hebrew, for example. But let's say awareness is something that is not consciousness. Conscious would be con, means with. Skia is aware or is knowing. So consciousness tends to be knowing something, and awareness tends to be something like a basic knowing that doesn't have an address. And there we can feel that we're belonging to all life. There is awareness in the earth. There is awareness in the planet. There is awareness in every living being. There is something that is joining us all together, not just the materials. We don't even know what the materials are. We assume our body is made of materials, but we don't know what that means. It's just the consciousness that tells us that. So there is, in a sense, life is just one thing. And non-duality is acknowledging that, is knowing that, is feeling that, is experiencing that. It's a life point of view. As if life is looking out of our eyes at itself. No filter. It's not easy, but get a sense of what that might mean. No filter. No screen. Life is looking out of our eyes at itself. So this image of a being as a whirlpool in the ocean, temporary movement of water in the ocean. We're part of the ocean and we're temporary. And there are many, it's a huge subject, the non-self. I've got courses on my website about that, etc. It's a huge subject, but there's so many ways we can. This is described in the texts. For example, the Buddha at some point said, "What's your problem, actually? All we are is a bunch of porridge walking about." That's all we are. He said it. He said, we're just a bunch of porridge, of broth, of food walking about. So it's inherent in the word nirvana. So we all know the word nirvana, or in the Pali language, nibbana, but it's not, maybe we didn't notice that it's expressing this non-duality so clearly. The word nirvana or nibbana is putting out the fire. That's its Sanskrit meaning. And it has a sense that we are burning as an individual. And I have to say, by the way, that the strongest sutta, Buddhist sutta that I know, and the Buddha in the tradition, it is the most powerful sutta that he gave. According to the tradition, 1,000 people became enlightened just listening to it. And it's called the Fire Sutta, Sutta of the Fire. And it basically says, we are burning, burning, burning. We are burning with need, with restlessness, with activity, with excess, with aversion, with not wanting, with survival, with busyness, with restlessness, with wanting things to be different, with constantly burning. And I think all of us can really feel that, can really sense it. And Nirvana then is putting out the fire. And it's non-dual in the sense that when the Buddha talked about Nirvana, he asked the monks, so when you put out the fire, where does it go? Where does it go? And clearly from the text and from the Buddha himself, it goes back to the universe. So there is this, in Nirvana itself, there is this fundamental understanding that samsara, or the ordinary mind, or the ordinary life, is a person struggling against and with conditions to survive, etc., is a person and the world. And we're burning with activity and needs. And Nirvana is where this goes, we're reabsorbed back into the world. The fire returns to the universal energy. And it really is in the text. It's not something that Stephen invents. It just has this real feeling of Nirvana as going back to where we came from. Like the Zen phrase, before we were born. So it's not, I'm using the word non-dual because it's so much a word that's around these days because of the Advaita teachers that you may know, and that maybe you have your favorite Advaita teachers, wherever they are, Muji, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Ramana Maharshi, or Krishnamurti. But it's very much inherent in the Dharma. And for example, the word interbeing, which is a word that I think was created by Thich Nhat Hanh, expresses it beautifully. Interbeing, that we are being with everything else. So there isn't a kind of a living being called Stephen or called Paul that's kind of looking at a point of view as life out there, and Stephen or Paul is here, and we're kind of sort of watching life from a distance. It feels like that, but actually that's illusion. Interbeing, fundamental understanding that everything is relational, that we are in constant relation. And this is a vidya, this is awareness itself, this is wisdom. It's our essence, is belonging, is together with, is being part of, is being created by conditions and going back into conditions. We are interbeing, we are interrelation. I remember once sitting with, every couple of years, I go to a Dharma teachers meeting in Switzerland of Dharma teachers from all over Europe. And Ajahn Sucitto one time just got up and made a very passionate talk. And he said, the Dharma is relational. It isn't about things, it's about relation. Everything is in relation to everything else. So we have to ask, so what's duality then? Duality is where we experience two sides of an experience. Dual, two. So I'm looking at this bell. And duality would be, there is a person and there is an object. And this is two sides of the experience. There is a subject and an object. For there to be two sides, what's the conditions that create two sides to an experience? It's a labeling of this as an object. It's all the thoughts that we have. This is a bell, it's for this, we need it for that. It has a purpose, it has a shape. So there is a mind, that means a network of brain cells that has an image bell. And this network is looking at bell and saying, I know you. And so there is a kind of a habit of mind that is looking at objects. And that creates two sides. The habit of mind is mostly self, me and the world. Me, but also concepts, also perceptions. Like I say, a bell sits in a way in the neural networks as a memory. A tree, a dog, a person, anything, everything is sitting there as in networks in the brain based on learning and habit. And from there, those networks are saying that's bell. So there is a withdrawal of, maybe happening very early on in life, withdrawal into creating a duality, me and the world. And what's the withdrawal? It's conditioning. It's the conditioning process, the learning process. It's samsara. We grow a self, and then we look from the self at the world. There's a beautiful, really powerful one-liner from Krishnamurti, who once said, the whole tragedy of human existence lies between the subject and the object. It's a knockout one-liner from Krishnamurti. So it's worth being aware of duality in order to help us understand non-duality. One way we can look at this also is the way that we filter reality because of conditioning. It's a filter. So we see things according to a filter, a pre-constructed filtering. If deep down we are made of the world, our primary nature is oneness with the world. When that primary nature, you could call it our Buddha nature, meets our human nature, what happens? If we're awake to it, if we're interested in that meeting of Buddha nature and human nature, what results from that is our search, our spiritual journey that is born from this, in a way, impossible situation of a non-dual Buddha nature, which is our deepest nature, meeting the duality in the world and feeling in many ways the pain of it. And from there comes the search and the longing. And so our search and our longing are really important as signs of our Buddha nature. All of you that feel the longing, what brought you here today to sit together and explore? It's some longing for meaning and for transcendence and for liberation. That longing is the expression of our Buddha nature, our basic understanding deep down of the unity that is trying to rejoin back again. So let's talk a little bit about practice now. What do we do with that? How can we develop a non-dual, a more non-dual way of looking at reality? Well, so I'm going to go through a few quite practical directions. One is that we need to be interested in our sources. What's the source? So, what's the source of a thought? Where does that come from? In the meditation, the guided meditation I was giving, I talked maybe too much, endlessly, about knowing. That we can get a sense that a thought is formed in awareness. Awareness is giving birth to form. That means to a thought. If we can go back to what gives birth to a thought, what gives birth to an experience, we go back to sources. It's like the water comes out of a tap and comes out of in a cup, and we drink it and so on. But it all comes from underground water. It all comes from the same water. The aquifer is our source, and then we turn on the tap. Many taps. So to be interested in the sources of our experience is one way in which we can kind of catch the awareness. The Buddha called himself Tathagata, meaning gone to that or come from that. What? No object, no thing. That, suchness, presence, source, just without being a thing, without being any object at all. Gone back in a way into just suchness, into just being. And it really, in a very practical way, I really recommend all of you a little bit when you do meditation to shift the view of thought as a disturbance, but seeing thought as a kind of a product, like as music, as awareness making forms, because that's what awareness does. And allowing that, so a thought as being awareness in form, and then at times there is a knowing without thought, which will be awareness without form. There is a very famous quote from the Buddha in the Sutta Nipata, where he said, "Don't get stuck." And so, I'm really talking from Buddhist text here. He said, don't get stuck on the product of awareness. Go back to the source. Not get stuck on the product. A thought is a product. A need is a product. a whatever, a cup of coffee is a product. Go back to the source. And that Buddha is talked specifically about that. So when we do that, go back to the source, in a way, we are in a kind of a relationship between form and formless. Sources will be without form, and an object like a bell will be form, but the form is known. So the knowing is not the form, the knowing is the source, and the form is the object that we see. I know many of you know the Heart Sutta, and the Heart Sutta says it very beautifully, that all the aggregates form, rupa, in is one of the 5 aggregates, and at the beginning of the Heart Sutta, this is the first aggregate, and the Heart Sutta says, form is nothing other than emptiness. Emptiness is nothing other than form, meaning the two are intimate. Form and formless are in dialogue, are together. So a second place that we can explore is, in a way, leave concepts about Dharma. It might be difficult, but you know, we don't really need too much concepts of, for example, emptiness or concepts or ideas of Dharma, but allow a little bit more the unknown, a bit more not knowing, a bit more mystery. Because one of the problems is that we have so many definitions. I really like the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, where there's a consensus for everybody to be an illusion. That when the Emperor came out, all the adults said, "Oh, you've got wonderful clothes." And it took a boy, the innocence, to say, "No, the Emperor's naked. There is no, he doesn't wear any clothes." You know the folk story. A boy, the innocent. So we need to be like the boy, the innocent mind. So that's a place where our spiritual growth can be really helped, to let go of concepts, even concepts like emptiness, and in a way drop out of definitions and too many sort of knowledge about our spiritual life. Cause and effect problem. We get stuck in it. We're so used to it. Neti, very much. Like Arjuna is talking about this endlessly. Neti, not this, not this, not this. Let go. We don't need beliefs about it. Less filters, less fixations. One time, again in the Sutta Nipata, someone came to the Buddha and said, how do you recognize an enlightened person? And the Buddha answered, you recognize them because you can't find them. Knockout answer. You recognize them because you can't find them. So the person who was asking said, I don't understand. What do you mean by that? Tell me more. And the Buddha said, an awakened mind, awakened person has gone beyond descriptions, labels, and definitions. So language doesn't work anymore. It's beyond the ordinary mind. So beyond the ordinary mind, descriptions and labels can't do the job. Some of you may, really enjoyed the teaching of Rob Urbea, and I also used to know him, and he really helped to give importance to the unfabricated, fabrication, sankhara, construction, and the unconstructed. Just like the image I said of the Buddha just after he was awakened, he talked about unborn. And Rob was very, really developed a teaching based on fabrication and unfabrication and the unfabricated. And here is what I'm talking about. The unfabricated is less concepts, more innocence, even less sense of fixation on this is this, and this is a fact, and this is known, and this is unknown. It's a little bit, reality is more like a dream. We can get a feeling of dreamlike reality. And if you're going to ask me, so how do I go into my work and sit in front of a computer if it feels like a dream? What's my company boss going to say if I go in there saying you're all a dream guy, you guys? But just hold on. Actually, it's a very nice way to go into it. It is a bit like a dream. It can be seen quite dreamlike in a way. Of course, you'll do your work, and of course, you'll act in life. We need it. Nobody's going to tell you must be in a dream, so you can't drive a car. It's not like that, but it's a deep place of being less fixated on things as reality. So a third place that we can explore non-duality is really to be interested in non-duality itself, non-dual teachers. As I say, look up YouTube, listen to James Lowe, listen to Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj talk on YouTube, read his books. I Am That is one of the greatest spiritual text ever written. I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj is a knockout non-dual Advaita non-dual text. It's super good. Nevertheless, I have to say that most non-dual teachers teach through satsang. And satsang means kind of just talking the truth. Very inspiring, but it's often not enough. And here's where I think, as I say, I'm really inspired by the Dharma, because the Dharma includes non-duality, but it also includes method where you need it, a path where you need it, to go step by step where it's needed. And then the non-duality becomes part of the background. But you do need to develop qualities inside. And quite a lot of, I would say, students of non-dual teachers, when they leave in the satsang and they go back to their life, they start arguing with people again. They fight with their partners. They think, how can I've just listened to this wonderful non-dual satsangs, and here I am back in London arguing with my partner. And the answer is it needs to settle in through practice, and that's where to me the Dharma is so important. It's not just about belief and inspiration. At the same time, we need to be interested in non-duality, or in the joining with us and the world in wherever we can. When we walk in nature and we just love to be part of nature, there's something there which is the touch of the non-duality. We are part of nature, so we love to, it gives us a good feeling to be part of things. The senses, eyes, ears, are doorways. They are already connecting us. And if we are in the senses without too much perceptions, concepts, responses, reactions in the mind, just in the senses, there's a lot of non-duality there. And a meditation that we did just before emphasized that. Like the Zen phrase, first of all, I saw me and the mountain. Duality, me, the mountain. Then I understood mountains are not mountains, and I'm not me. The mountains and me disappeared. But now I'm at rest, and mountains are mountains again, and I'm me again, but from a different place. So I'm coming to a close soon because I've been talking quite a long time, but we do need to practice beyond our limits. I really suggest exploring beyond the limits of our mindful awareness, mindful practice, our meditation practice, really exploring beyond limits, even limits, and I think we'll do that in the next meditation, limits of boundary. We go out, we feel connected. When we're walking in nature, when we're sitting in nature, we're just there with the world outside. And we're connected, and the world and us become, in a way, one. And we rest in that. You're looking at me right now and each other on the screen. So there is a person looking at a screen or pictures. But what's in between you and the picture? What's connecting you and the picture that you're looking at? What's in between? The space between. I've been on loads and loads of retreats in my life, tons of them. I actually started practicing with Goenka in 1976, actually. I took my first Goenka retreat in India. And then in the 80s, I had lots and lots and lots of Goenka style retreats in the UK. And then I moved to a more open practice. And I've had really weeks in small rooms, just practicing in India on my own. But one of the, I think, the strongest retreats that I ever took was actually in my own house, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I don't remember. And I recommend it to all of you, by the way. You don't need to go off to the ashram. You can do it at home. But I decided to practice 5 or 6 hours meditation a day, and apart from that, be with my wife and grandchildren and so on, although I stopped teaching for 9 months. And I sat under a tree from 5 in the morning till 7:30 or 8, and then again from 6 to 8 or whatever in the evening, afternoon, for whatever, 5 or 6 hours meditation a day under a tree in my garden, and it was just so amazing to sort of be absorbed into everything. At one time there were more than one time, 2 hedgehogs that began to play hide and seek around my chair. I was very still, and they were playing around me, running around, trying to catch each other. And the world was around alive, and all I needed to do was just let go into it, and it was a very strong retreat for me. There is a sutta that you might know, another sutta from the Buddha, where he was challenging one of his students, and he said, light comes through the window and shines and lights up the wall on the opposite side of the room. If there's no wall, where does the light go? So the student said, well, it probably goes to the plants outside. And if there are no plants, well, I guess it goes to the water that must be there. And if there's no water, well, I guess it must go to the earth. And if there's no earth, there's nowhere for the light to land. Where does it go? I think the person was stumped, the student. And the Buddha simply said, it's released. The light is released. And I think that's quite a good image of non-duality. If we have a dualistic version, me watching something, and the duality goes, then it's like the space in the room or light. It doesn't fall on anything. It's just there. So finally, in your meditation, in your practice, in your learning, do pay attention to Dzogchen, to Advaita, to Mahamudra teachers. Give some interest to non-meditate, what you might call non-meditation, meaning meditation is not something to be done. There's nothing really to do or to fix, but it's kind of just being with what is, because that is all there is, and it's fine, and there's nowhere else to be or to go. So we may only be able to catch it in small moments, but that's still very precious. There's nowhere else that's better right now. There cannot be. This is the reality right now. Nowhere else can be better. And that's why, surrender or dropping is part of that, is a way in which we can encourage that